Imagine you wake up to a sound that shouldn't exist. A deep, low groan, like something massive in pain. But it isn't alive, it's the ice, and it's slowly crushing your ship. You're not in your own time. The year is 1915. You're one of 28 people stranded at the very bottom of the world, in the frozen silence of Antarctica. And your only way home is being torn apart. It began as a dream. A British explorer named Ernest Shackleton wanted to be the first to cross the entire continent of Antarctica on foot. You signed up to be part of history. The story goes that his job advert was brutally honest. Low pay, bitter cold, constant danger, and a safe return that wasn't guaranteed. And still, thousands of people lined up to join. Your ship was called the Endurance, a name that means never giving up. You set sail full of hope, heading toward a land no human had ever crossed. But Antarctica had other plans. Before you could even reach the shore, the sea around you began to freeze solid. And one morning, you understood the truth. The ice had you. Imagine the ocean itself turning to stone around your ship. The Endurance couldn't move forward. It couldn't go back. It was locked in place, gripped tight by the frozen sea. For months, you waited in the white nothing. The sun vanished completely. For weeks there was only darkness and a cold so deep it could freeze the breath right in front of your face. But Shackleton understood something powerful. He kept everyone busy with games, jobs, and songs, because he knew that fear and despair could destroy a crew faster than the cold ever could. Then the ice began to shift. And with it came a sound none of you would ever forget. The screaming of wooden beams as millions of tons of ice squeezed the ship from every direction. Imagine listening to your only shelter being slowly crushed. Water started leaking in. Day by day, the mighty Endurance was losing the fight. And then Shackleton said the words everyone dreaded. "She's going. We have to get off." You grabbed whatever you could carry and stepped out onto the bare, shifting ice. Imagine watching your ship, your home, your safety, your only way back, slowly sink beneath the ice until it was gone. Now you were truly alone, stranded on a frozen sea. You were hundreds of miles from another living soul. No radio, no rescue, nobody in the world even knew where you were. Your survival now depended on one thing only: each other. You set up tents on the ice, hoping it would drift you closer to land. Imagine living on a floating sheet of frozen water that could crack open beneath you at any moment. And one night, it did. The ice split right under the camp. But the crew moved fast, helped each other, and Shackleton made sure not a single person was left in danger. For months you drifted, surviving on what you could find, your clothes never fully dry, the cold never letting up. And then the ice began to break apart for good. You still had 3 small lifeboats, saved from the ship. So it was time for the most dangerous gamble yet, taking your chances on the open ocean. Imagine climbing into a tiny wooden boat in seas full of ice, with waves towering over your head. For days you rowed, soaked and freezing, your hands cracked from the cold. After a brutal week at sea, you finally reached solid ground, a tiny, barren rock called Elephant Island. For the first time in 497 days, you were standing on actual land. But the relief didn't last. The island was empty and far from any route a ship would ever take. Simply waiting here would mean waiting forever. So Shackleton made a decision so bold it sounded impossible. He would take 5 men in a single small lifeboat and sail for help across the most dangerous ocean on Earth. His target was a whaling station on an island called South Georgia. The problem? It was 800 miles away, across seas famous for swallowing ships far larger than his. Imagine setting off in a 22-foot open boat into mountains of water and screaming winds, with freezing spray turning to ice on every surface. One bad wave could end everything. For 16 days they battled the sea. Waves crashed over them again and again. They had to chip ice off the boat to keep it afloat, navigating by rare glimpses of the sun. Finding that one tiny island in an endless ocean, with old instruments and a soaked chart, was almost a miracle. A few miles off course and they would have sailed past it into nothing. And yet, against every odd, they made it. South Georgia rose out of the sea in front of them. They had crossed one of the deadliest oceans in the world in a lifeboat. But fate wasn't finished. They had landed on the wrong side of the island. The whaling station and rescue lay on the far coast, beyond unmapped mountains and glaciers. No one had ever crossed the interior of South Georgia. Ever. And Shackleton's group had no map, no climbing gear, just screws hammered into their boots for grip on the ice. Imagine climbing frozen mountains for 36 hours straight, no sleep, no rest, knowing that stopping for too long in that cold was a chance you simply couldn't take. At one point, trapped on a steep slope as darkness and freezing fog closed in, they made a desperate choice. They sat on a coiled rope and slid down the mountain into the unknown. It could have ended in disaster. Instead, it saved them. They survived the slide and kept moving, 3 exhausted men chasing the faint hope of human voices. And then they heard it. A sound from another world. a steam whistle calling the whalers to work. After nearly 2 years, it was the first sign of civilization they had heard. Imagine 3 men, frozen and starving, their faces black with grime, stumbling into the station. The first people to see them barely recognized them as human. Shackleton walked up to the station manager, a man who knew him. The manager stared in disbelief and asked who he was. Shackleton simply said, "My name is Shackleton." The whole world had assumed they were dead. They'd been gone so long, lost in the ice, that hope had been given up long ago. And yet, here they were, alive. But Shackleton couldn't rest, because 22 of his men were still out there, stranded on Elephant Island, waiting. And he had made them a promise: he would come back for every one. Imagine the weight of that promise. His men were trusting him to return across the same killer seas. Most people would have broken. Shackleton refused to leave anyone behind. 3 times he tried to reach them. 3 times the ice and storms forced him back. Imagine the agony, so close to your friends, and the frozen sea slamming the door again and again. Back on Elephant Island, the 22 men survived under 2 overturned lifeboats, sharing food, keeping watch, scanning the horizon every single day, wondering if their leader was still alive. 4 months passed. 4 months of waiting and fading hope, telling each other, maybe today. And then, on the 4th attempt, a small ship appeared through the mist. Imagine looking up after all that time and seeing a boat. Seeing him, Shackleton, standing on the deck, counting heads, desperate to know one thing. He called out across the water, his voice shaking, "Are you all well?" And the answer came back, "All safe. All well." Every single man had survived. Stop and let that sink in. 2 years lost at the bottom of the world. A ship crushed by ice. Months adrift on freezing seas. Impossible boat journeys. Mountains crossed with no map. And after all of it, after everything that should have ended them many times over, not one man was lost. All 28 came home alive. Shackleton never reached his original goal. He never crossed Antarctica. By that measure, the expedition was a complete failure. And yet today, he's remembered as one of the greatest leaders in history. Not for what he conquered, but for what he refused to give up: his people. Imagine a leader who, in the worst conditions humans have ever faced, decided that no goal and no glory was worth a single life. That was Ernest Shackleton. His story is still studied today, by armies, by companies, by anyone who wants to understand what real leadership looks like when everything falls apart. Because true courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing, again and again, to protect the people who depend on you, even when all hope seems lost. Now you close your eyes. The groaning ice, the towering waves, the endless white, all of it fades away. And you return to your own warm, safe, ordinary world. But you carry something with you. The knowledge that, more than 100 years ago, 28 real people were swallowed by the most hostile place on Earth. And through impossible odds, the loyalty of a leader who would not quit, and a courage most of us will never be tested by, every last one of them made it home. Their ship, the Endurance, was lost for over a century, hidden deep beneath the ice. And then, recently, explorers found it, still standing on the ocean floor, almost perfectly preserved. As if the frozen sea had kept it safe all that time, like a monument to the people who survived. The name on its stern still clear after more than 100 years, Endurance. A perfect name, because in the end, that is exactly what they did. They endured. So the next time you feel like giving up, remember the ice, remember the impossible miles, and remember the leader who came back. Remember that the human will to survive, and to protect each other, can outlast even the cruelest place on Earth. Thanks for traveling through time with us. Which incredible true story should we explore next? Tell us in the comments.